The first time my daughter-in-law called me a pig, I was standing beneath a canopy of white orchids that cost more than my first car. They directed the flowers along the aisle like a tunnel of money. Orchids from Singapore. Roses flown in from Ecuador. The air was thick with sweetness and ego, and every step I took across the marble floor echoed like I didn't belong there. I heard the word before I saw the face. Honestly, a woman whispered too loudly from the second row, her lips pinched with champagne judgment. Look at her posture, like a pig dressed in silk. Soft laughter followed, the kind that pretends to be polite. I didn't turn my head, I didn't flinch. Years of widowhood had taught me that sometimes survival meant stillness. My name is Margaret Hale. I was 58 years old that afternoon, wearing a navy blue dress I'd bought on sale because it reminded me of the one I wore to my husband's funeral. Simple, clean, no diamonds, no flash. Apparently that made me livestock. My son Daniel stood at the altar in a tuxedo that fit him better than any role he'd ever played in life. He looked handsome in that borrowed confidence sort of way. The kind men get when they believe they've finally arrived. Beside him stood Olivia Whitmore, 29. Perfect teeth, perfect skin. The daughter of Victor Whitmore, real estate mogul, tech investor, and according to Forbes, a billionaire with a B. Her family filled the front rows. Men in tailored suits. Women with faces stretched smooth by surgeons I could never afford, even when I could. And me? I was the middle class widow, the woman who wrote the checks but didn't belong in the picture. The wedding cost $300,000. Every cent of it came from me. The irony didn't escape me. It rarely does. I had paid because Daniel asked me to, because he said it would mean everything to Olivia's family, because he said, Mom, just this once, let me start my life right. I had paid because I loved him, because loving him had always been expensive. The officiant cleared his throat, the music swelled, the whispers died down, but the damage was already done. As I took my seat, Olivia leaned in to adjust her veil. Her perfume drifted toward me, something sharp and floral like entitlement. She didn't look at me when she spoke. Try not to eat too much at the reception, she murmured, lips curved in a smile meant for the cameras. We wouldn't want the guests distracted. My fingers tightened around my clutch. For one heartbeat, I considered standing up, walking out, letting the orchids wilt in my absence. Instead, I smiled back. I'd learned long ago that silence could be sharper than any insult. The vows blurred together. Love, commitment, forever. Words that meant very different things to different people. When Daniel said, I do, his voice cracked. I felt something twist in my chest, pride mixed with fear. I wondered not for the first time whether I'd failed him by protecting him too much, by fixing too many messes, by writing too many checks. The applause came like a wave. Cameras flashed. Olivia's family stood, clapping as if they'd personally financed the happiness. At the reception, I was placed at a table near the back, close enough to be seen, far enough to be dismissed. Victor Whitmore never spoke to me directly. He shook my hand with two fingers earlier, see, eyes already sliding past me towards someone more useful. His wife, Eleanor, offered me a once-over that lingered on my shoes. You must be so proud, she said, voice syrupy, to see your son marry up. Up, I sipped my water. I'm proud of him, I replied, period. She laughed softly as if I'd made a joke. Around us, the reception hummed, crystal glasses, laughter, a string quartet pretending this was love and not a merger. Daniel didn't come to my table once. Olivia did once, to ask the photographer to take a family photo without me in it. Just immediate family, she said, gesturing vaguely. You understand. I did. I always understood more than people thought. At 9:30 I left, no goodbye, no announcement. I walked past the orchids. Past the champagne tower, past the women who had decided my worth in a glance. In the car, I sat for a long moment with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing in the quiet. My phone buzzed, a calendar reminder. Monday 9:00 a.m. boardroom, WHIT Mori Industries. First day as CEO. I smiled then, not because I felt powerful, but because I felt calm. They had no idea who they'd been mocking. 6 months earlier, after my husband's death anniversary passed quietly and my son stopped returning my calls, I had done something reckless. I had invested, not loudly, not publicly. I hadn't slapped my name on buildings or announced myself at galas. I had listened. Whitmore Industries had been bleeding cash through shell subsidiaries, over-leveraged acquisitions, accounting tricks that looked impressive until you traced them backward. Victor Whitmore was brilliant at appearances, less so at math. I bought shares through 3 holding companies, then 5, then 7. By the time anyone noticed, I held 51% controlling interest. The board vote had been scheduled quietly. No press, no fuss. Victor had assumed the majority shareholder was a hedge fund, anonymous, distant, harmless. He never expected me. Monday came faster than anyone was ready for. At 8:57 a.m., I stood outside the glass-walled boardroom wearing the same navy blue suit from the wedding. Pressed. Intentional, through the glass I could see Victor at the head of the table, laughing with 2 board members. Confident, untouchable. The assistant opened the door. Mrs. Hale, she announced. Victor turned. His smile froze. For a split second, I saw it, the recalculation, the disbelief, the dawning terror. I took my seat at the head of the table. Good morning, I said. I'm Margaret Hale. As of Friday, I am the majority shareholder of Whitmore Industries. Effective today, I'll be serving as interim CEO. Silence crashed into the room. Victor stood so abruptly his chair scraped backward. This is some kind of mistake. I met his eyes, calm, steady. No, seeing his face, remembering the pig comment, the whispers, Olivia's smile. This is accountability. I opened my folder. Let's begin. By the end of that first meeting, Victor was sweating through his suit. By the end of the day, I had requested a full internal audit. By the end of the week, I would learn that the real betrayal hadn't come from my daughter in law. It had come from my son. And that knowledge was waiting for me, quietly, patiently, like a blade wrapped in velvet. By Friday evening, the building was almost empty. Whitmore Industries at night felt different, less arrogant, more honest. The lights dimmed automatically floor by floor, seeing no reason to impress anyone anymore. I sat alone in the CEO's office Victor once occupied, a room designed to intimidate, dark wood, city skyline, a desk too large for one conscience. The audit files lay open in front of me. I had already uncovered enough to dismantle Victor's public image, inflated asset values, fake partnerships, loans masked as revenue, a house of mirrors propped up by charm and silence. But that wasn't what made my hands shake. It was Daniel's name, repeated, embedded, quietly threaded through the mess like a signature written in invisible ink. I leaned back slowly, as if moving too fast might shatter something fragile inside my chest. Daniel Hale, consultant, advisory fees, offshore transfers routed through a firm I recognized, the same financial opportunity he'd mentioned casually over dinner months ago, the one I'd warned him about, the one he'd laughed off. My son hadn't just benefited from the fraud, he'd helped design it. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I wasn't a CEO or a shareholder or a woman reclaiming power. I was just a mother remembering a small boy who used to wait up for me on the porch light when I worked late, afraid the dark would swallow me if he went inside. I had raised him to be better than this. Or maybe I had raised him to believe consequences were optional. My phone buzzed. Daniel. I let it ring. Then again, finally I answered. Mom, he said, breathless, forced casual. We need to talk. Yes, I replied, we do. There was a pause. Olivia says you embarrassed her father. The board meeting? Your wife, I corrected gently, called me a pig at your wedding. Silence. She didn't mean? She meant exactly what she said. I stood walking toward the window. The city glittered, uncaring. Daniel, did you think I wouldn't notice the money? Another pause, longer this time. I was fixing things, he said finally. For you, for us, Whitmore was unstable. I was making sure. You were stealing, I said. No anger, just truth. His breath hitched. Mom, please, if this comes out, it will, I said, on Monday. He raised his voice then. You'd destroy me? I closed my eyes again. No, I whispered. You did that yourself. I hung up. That night I didn't sleep. I thought about my husband, about how he used to say character showed itself when no one was watching, about how proud he'd been of Daniel, about how he would have handled this with more grace than I felt capable of. Monday morning arrived sharp and unforgiving. I called an emergency board meeting. Victor didn't attend, his lawyer did, Daniel did. Olivia sat beside him, her hand gripping his arm like an anchor. She wouldn't look at me. I laid everything out, the numbers, the transfers, the falsified reports. The room grew smaller with every slide. When I finished, I stood. As of this moment, I said, Whitmore Industries will cooperate fully with federal investigators. Victor Whitmore has resigned effective immediately. Daniel Hale has been terminated for cause. Daniel stood up, eyes wild. You can't do this. I already have. Olivia finally spoke. You're enjoying this. I looked at her, the girl who thought wealth was proof of worth, who mistook cruelty for confidence. No, I said, I'm surviving it. She scoffed. You think this makes you powerful? I considered the question. Explain power to someone who's never been without it. No, I said again, it makes me free. The fallout was brutal. Victor's empire collapsed within weeks. Headlines used words like illusion and fraud and spectacular downfall. Friends vanished. Invitations dried up. Olivia moved out of the penthouse before the locks changed. Daniel pled guilty. He didn't go to prison, first offense, cooperation, leniency, but he lost everything else, his marriage, his reputation, his certainty. He came to my house one evening months later, thinner, quieter. I don't expect forgiveness, he said, standing awkwardly in my doorway. I just didn't know where else to go. I studied him, the man he'd become, the boy he'd been. You can come in, I said, but you can't hide. He nodded. That was the beginning, not the ending. Whitmore Industries stabilized under new leadership, ethical, transparent, boring in the best way. I stepped down after a year, content to remain a silent owner. I donated a portion of the profits to scholarships for women who'd been underestimated, dismissed, mocked. As for Olivia, I heard she'd remarried quickly. Another wealthy family, another illusion. Sometimes people mistake repetition for reinvention. On the anniversary of the wedding, I returned the navy blue dress to my closet. It no longer fit the woman I'd become. I wasn't the pig in silk. I was the woman who paid attention. The woman who waited, the woman who finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. And for the first time since my husband died, I slept peacefully, knowing I had lost much, yes, but never myself. That was the thing they never understood. I didn't reclaim my power. I had always had it. I thought that would be the end of it. Stories like mine are supposed to close on justice, on balance restored, on a woman standing alone at a window with peace finally earned. And for a while, that ending held. Quiet mornings, coffee on the porch, bored calls replaced with books. My name slowly drifting out of conversations that thrived on scandal. But life doesn't always respect neat conclusions. 3 months after Daniel moved into the guest room, I received a letter, handwrit, careful, the kind of penmanship that comes from someone who wants to be understood. It was from Victor Whitmore. He was living in Arizona now, according to the return address. A smaller house, no assistant, no letterhead. He wrote that he had lost everything except time, that he spent his days replaying moments he'd dismissed, people he'd underestimated, that he remembered the wedding, the orchids, the champagne, the way he hadn't bothered to learn my name. He wrote, I thought power was something you inherited or stole. I didn't know it could be practiced. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Some apologies are for the person giving them, not the one receiving. Daniel took longer. Shame is heavy and he carried it awkwardly. He found a job, nothing glamorous, compliance work at a regional firm, long hours, modest pay, honest labor. For the first time in his life, no shortcuts. One night, almost a year later, we sat at the kitchen table long after dinner had gone cold. I didn't respect you, he said suddenly. I didn't interrupt. I loved you, he continued, eyes fixed on the wood grain. But I thought you were small, safe. I thought success looked like Victor. Like Olivia's world, I waited. When you took everything apart, he said, voice breaking, I realized how wrong I was. You didn't raise me to win, you raised me to be decent, and I chose winning. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. You can choose again, I said, but not because I forgive you. He looked up, startled. Because you forgive yourself, I finished. That was the moment I knew he might be okay. Not redeemed, not fixed, but honest. As for me, something unexpected happened when the noise finally died down. People started calling. Women mostly, some widowed, some divorced, some still married but invisible. They had read the articles, the think pieces, the breathless takes on the mother who toppled a tycoon. They wanted advice, not about money, about courage. I never called myself a mentor. I hosted small dinners instead. 8 women at a time, no press, no speeches. Just food and truth and the unspoken relief of being seen without explanation. I told them what I'd learned too late and just in time, that humiliation is not the opposite of power, avoidance is, that silence can be strategic but only if it's chosen, that the most dangerous thing a woman can do is underestimate herself because others already will. On my 60th birthday, Daniel gave me a small wrapped box. Inside was a pen, simple, heavy, balanced. For your next chapter, he said. I smiled. That night, alone in my bedroom, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Lines at the corners of my eyes, silver threading my hair. A woman unmistakably shaped by loss and no longer afraid of it. I thought of the wedding again, of the orchids, of the word pig thrown like a verdict, and I laughed, not bitterly, not sharply, just honestly. They had measured me by the wrong currency. They had mistaken quiet for weakness. They had assumed motherhood meant surrender. I turned off the light and lay down, knowing something with absolute clarity. The story they told about me had ended. Mine was still being written.